Hello everyone, and welcome to our deep dive into the fascinating world of muscle for NEET Class 11 Biology. Today, we'll explore how these incredible tissues enable everything from a gentle blink to a powerful sprint. We'll start with the basics, then gradually build up to advanced concepts, preparing you for all levels of questions, right up to the NEET exam. Get ready for an exciting journey through the powerhouses of movement. Let's kick things off with the basics of muscles. What are they, what do they do, and what different types exist in our body? Muscles are truly remarkable tissues, specialized to contract and generate force, driving all forms of movement. They are essential not just for moving our limbs, but also for maintaining posture, and even for the vital functions of our internal organs. We broadly classify them into three types: skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. Skeletal muscles, like those in your arms and legs, are under your conscious control, allowing you to move voluntarily. Smooth muscles, found in organs like your stomach or intestines, work involuntarily, handling processes like digestion without you even thinking about it. And then there's the cardiac muscle, unique to your heart, which beats tirelessly and involuntarily to pump blood throughout your body. Each type has a distinct structure and role, but all share the fundamental ability to contract. To further clarify, think of skeletal muscles as the ones you will to move, like when you decide to pick up a pen. They're attached to bones and are responsible for all your conscious actions. Smooth muscles operate behind the scenes. They're the silent workers in your internal organs, pushing food along your digestive tract or regulating blood flow. You don't control them. And the cardiac muscle, well, it's the ultimate tireless worker, keeping your heart pumping rhythmically, day in and day out, without any conscious effort from your side. So, whether it's a deliberate movement, an automatic internal process, or the continuous beat of your heart, muscles are the fundamental engines. Now, let's test your understanding of the easy concepts. Take a moment to think about these questions. Q1. Which type of muscle is responsible for voluntarily moving your arm? Q2. Where would you typically find smooth muscle in the human body? And Q3. What is the primary function of cardiac muscle? Pause the video if you need more time, and then we'll move on to the next level. Ready to dive a bit deeper? In the medium section, we'll peel back the layers of skeletal muscle to reveal its intricate structure, from the overall organ down to its tiny contractile units. A skeletal muscle isn't just a blob of tissue, it's a highly organized organ. Imagine it like a cable made of many smaller wires. The entire muscle is composed of bundles called fascicles. Each fascicle, in turn, is packed with numerous individual muscle cells, which we call muscle fibers. These fibers are quite unique. They're long, multinucleated, and enveloped by a specialized cell membrane known as the sarcolemma. Inside, the sarcoplasm, which is the muscle fiber's cytoplasm, contains a vital network called the sarcoplasmic reticulum, or SR. This SR acts as a storage site for calcium ions, which, as we'll soon learn, are absolutely crucial for muscle contraction. The true magic, however, lies within the myofibrils. Within each muscle fiber, filling the sarcoplasm, are numerous fine, parallel filaments called myofibrils. These are the actual contractile elements that give skeletal muscle its characteristic striated or striped appearance under a microscope. This striation comes from the alternating dark and light bands along the myofibril. The dark bands are called A bands, and the light bands are I bands. Each I band is bisected by a thin, dense line known as the Z line. The segment of a myofibril between two consecutive Z lines is called a sarcomere, and this is the fundamental, functional unit of muscle contraction. Think of it as the basic building block where all the action happens. So, what are these myofibrils made of? They primarily consist of two types of protein filaments, thick filaments and thin filaments. The thick filaments are composed mainly of a protein called myosin, and they are located within the A-band of the sarcomere. The thin filaments, on the other hand, are made primarily of actin protein. They extend from the Z-lines, through the I-band, and partially into the A-band. Crucially, the thin filaments also contain two regulatory proteins, troponin and tropomyosin. The interaction and sliding of these actin and myosin filaments past each other form the basis of muscle contraction. Myosin heads, which are extensions from the thick filaments, are designed to form temporary connections, or cross bridges, with the actin filaments. Alright, time for some medium-level questions to solidify your understanding. Q1. What is the functional unit of contraction in a skeletal muscle fiber? Q2. Name the two primary contractile proteins found in myofibrils. Q3. Which band in the sarcomere contains only thin filaments? Q4. What is the role of the sarcoplasmic reticulum in muscle contraction? And Q5. Describe the arrangement of thick and thin filaments in the A-band. Take your time to answer these before moving on. Now, let's elevate our understanding to the hard level. Here, we'll unravel the intricate molecular dance of muscle contraction, focusing on the famous sliding filament theory. At the heart of muscle contraction is the sliding filament theory, a groundbreaking concept proposed by Huxley and Neiderjerk. It revolutionized our understanding by stating that muscles contract not because the actin and myosin filaments themselves shorten, but because the thinner actin filaments slide past the thicker myosin filaments. Imagine two sets of comb teeth interlocking and pulling past each other. This sliding action pulls the Z-lines of the sarcomere closer together, effectively shortening the entire sarcomere. During this process, we observe specific changes. The I-bands, containing only thin filaments, shorten and can even disappear, and the H-zone, where only thick filaments are present, also shortens or vanishes. However, an important point for any ET is that the length of the A-band, which corresponds to the length of the myosin filaments, remains unchanged throughout contraction. This fundamental principle underpins all muscle movement. The actual sliding in the sliding filament theory is driven by a repetitive sequence of events known as the crossbridge cycle. It all starts when the myosin head, equipped with ATPase activity, binds to an ATP molecule and hydrolyzes it into ADP, an inorganic phosphate. This energizes and cocks the myosin head into a high-energy position. Next, this energized myosin head attaches to specific active sites on the actin filament, forming what we call a cross-bridge. Then comes the power stroke. As ADP and pi are released, the myosin head pivots, pulling the actin filament towards the center of the sarcomere. Finally, a new ATP molecule binds to the myosin head, causing it to detach from the actin filament, ready to begin another cycle. This cycle continues as long as calcium ions and ATP are available, causing a continuous pulling action and muscle shortening. For this intricate crossbridge cycle to occur, two key molecules are absolutely essential: calcium ions and ATP. Let's start with calcium. When a muscle fiber receives a nerve signal, calcium ions, or Ca2+, are rapidly released from the sarcoplasmic reticulum into the muscle cell's cytoplasm. These Ca2+ ions then bind to troponin, a protein associated with the actin filament. This binding causes a conformational change in troponin, which in turn pulls another protein, tropomyosin, away from the active sites on the actin filament. With these active sites now exposed, the myosin heads are free to bind to actin and initiate the crossbridge cycle, leading to contraction. Now, for ATP, it's the muscle's energy currency. ATP is needed not only to cock the myosin head, providing energy for the power stroke, but also crucially, for the myosin head to detach from actin. Without new ATP, the myosin heads would remain stuck, causing muscle rigidity. Lastly, ATP also powers the calcium pumps that actively transport Ca2+ back into the sarcoplasmic reticulum, allowing the muscle to relax. Time to tackle some hard-level questions. Q1. According to the sliding filament theory, what happens to the length of the A-bend during muscle contraction? Q2. Explain the role of troponin and tropomyosin in regulating muscle contraction. Q3. What is the primary energy source for muscle contraction, and how is it utilized by the myosin head? Q4. Describe the sequence of events that leads to the formation of a cross-bridge between actin and myosin. Q5. What structural changes occur in the sarcomere, I-band, H-zone, Z-line during muscle contraction? Q6. Why is ATP required for both muscle contraction and relaxation? And Q7. If Ca2 plus ions are not released, what would be the immediate consequence on muscle contraction? Consider these deeply. Alright, future medical professionals, welcome to the hardest level. Here, we'll integrate complex concepts like excitation-contraction coupling, explore muscle fiber types, and delve into clinical conditions and biomechanical principles, pushing your understanding to competitive depths. At this advanced stage, we connect the dots between nerve impulses and muscle contraction through a process called excitation-contraction coupling. It starts with a motor neuron releasing acetylcholine at the neuromuscular junction, triggering an action potential on the muscle fiber's sarcolemma. This electrical signal doesn't just stay on the surface, it rapidly propagates deep into the muscle fiber through specialized tunnels called T-tubules. The depolarization of these T-tubules then acts as a signal, triggering the sarcoplasmic reticulum to release a flood of calcium ions into the sarcoplasm. It's this surge of calcium that finally binds to troponin, unveiling the actin binding sites and initiating the cross-bridge cycle, directly linking the electrical excitation to the mechanical contraction. This intricate communication ensures precise and rapid muscle responses. Let's revisit the cross-bridge cycle with a competitive edge. After the power stroke, the myosin head remains attached to actin in a rigor state until a fresh ATP molecule binds, causing its detachment. This is crucial. Without new ATP, the myosin head cannot detach. This explains the phenomenon of rigor mortis. After death, ATP production ceases, leaving myosin heads permanently bound to actin, resulting in the characteristic post-mortem muscle stiffness until tissue degradation eventually breaks the bonds. Understanding this molecular detail is key. Furthermore, muscles can become fatigued, an inability to contract forcefully due to various factors, accumulation of lactic acid, depletion of ATP and glycogen reserves, ionic imbalances like potassium accumulation outside the cell, and even reduced calcium release or sensitivity. This leads us to the concept of oxygen debt, the extra oxygen required after intense exercise to restore ATP, creatine phosphate, and glycogen levels, and to convert accumulated lactic acid back to pyruvate in the liver. Muscles aren't all the same, they come in different flavors or fiber types, each optimized for specific functions. We primarily distinguish between red and white muscle fibers. Red muscle fibers, also known as slow-twitch or type I fibers, are rich in myoglobin, giving them their characteristic red color, and are packed with mitochondria and an extensive capillary supply. They rely on aerobic respiration, contract slowly, and are highly resistant to fatigue, making them ideal for endurance activities like marathon running or maintaining posture. In contrast, white muscle fibers, or fast-twitch type II fibers, have lower myoglobin content, fewer mitochondria, and a less extensive capillary network. They primarily utilize anaerobic glycolysis, contract rapidly and powerfully, but fatigue quickly. These are suited for short, explosive bursts of activity, such as sprinting or weightlifting. Understanding these differences is vital for sports science and clinical contexts. Additionally, let's briefly touch upon some muscle disorders relevant for NEET, myasthenia gravis, an autoimmune disease affecting neuromuscular junctions, muscular dystrophy, a group of genetic disorders leading to progressive muscle degeneration, often due to dystrophin mutations, TENI, rapid muscle spasms due to low calcium, and gout, accumulation of uric acid crystals in joints. Finally, let's consider a biomechanical insight, the force-velocity relationship. This principle states that the force a muscle can generate is inversely related to its velocity of shortening. In simpler terms, a muscle generates its maximum force when it contracts slowly or is held in an isometric contraction, meaning it's generating force without changing length. As the velocity of contraction increases, the force the muscle can produce decreases. This is because at higher speeds, there's less time for the optimal number of crossbridges to form and cycle effectively between actin and myosin. This relationship is fundamental in understanding athletic performance, designing training programs, and even in engineering prosthetics, as it defines the inherent mechanical limits and capabilities of muscle tissue. This comprehensive understanding of muscle, from its microscopic components to its physiological responses and disorders, is what sets apart a competitive NET aspirant. Alright, let's tackle the first 5 hardest level questions. Q1. Describe the sequence of events from the arrival of an action potential at the neuromuscular junction to the release of calcium ions from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Q2. Explain why rigor mortis occurs, relating it to the crossbridge cycle and ATP availability. Q3. Differentiate between red and white muscle fibers based on their structure, metabolic pathways, and functional characteristics. Q4. What is oxygen debt, and how is it related to muscle fatigue and recovery? Q5. Discuss the pathogenesis of myasthenia gravis and its impact on muscle function. Take your time, these require detailed answers. Now, for the remaining 5 challenging questions. Q6. How does the force-velocity relationship explain why lifting a heavy weight quickly is harder than lifting it slowly? Q7. Beyond ATP depletion, what other factors contribute to muscle fatigue? Q8. Which specific protein mutation is often associated with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and what is its normal function? Q9. Explain the role of T-tubules in excitation-contraction coupling. And Q10. If a person experiences TENI, what immediate physiological imbalance should be suspected? These questions are designed to test your in-depth understanding and critical thinking. And that brings us to the end of our in-depth exploration of muscle. We've journeyed from basic definitions to the intricate molecular mechanisms, covering everything you need for your NET exam. Remember, consistent practice and a clear understanding of concepts are your keys to success. For more such comprehensive educational content, practice questions, and personalized learning experiences, visit synapse.omaps.in. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for regular updates and more engaging lessons. Keep learning, keep growing, and excel in your NET preparation. See you in the next lesson.